Ministers, where we, the people who are gathered here, made a declaration inspired by the work of Mayor Charlotte Maxeke to move from theory, to move from the past into action and implementation. Having said that, I would like to greet our ministers, Minister in the Presidency, Mayor Maropene Ramokgopa, our Minister of Human Settlement, Melane. I want once more to greet our public protector who has been with us since morning. She read the declaration, Advocate Kaleka. I also want to greet Mayor Nolita Fakude. I want to greet Justice Albisax, our veteran, our inspiration. I also want to greet the Ambassador of Ireland, and we appreciate and acknowledge your support. We know the success of this program is also towards your support and your contributions. With that, I'm also going to introduce, after the anthems, I'm not going to come back here. I'm going to introduce the facilitator for this session, Dr. Tozama April, who will take us through. May we please be upstanding for the national anthem and the African Union anthem. I'm assuming you understand the protocols of the anthems, that we stand in attention with our hands on the side, and our gentlemen will take off their hats if there are any, but obviously our queens will keep their crowns. Let's have the national anthem followed by the AU anthem.
Sounds the call to come together, and united we shall stand. Let us live and strive for freedom in South Africa, our
Let us all unite and celebrate together the victories won for our liberation. Let us dedicate ourselves to rise together to defend our liberty and unity. All sons and daughters of Africa, flesh of the sun and flesh of the sky, let us make Africa a tree of life.
Thank you so much. I just want to make one or two announcements. Again, we are live streaming this session. And just to announce that the former president, Dr. Robinson, will join us very soon. She is on her way. Thank you so much. I will now hand over to Dr. April.
Thank you, my dear sister, Dr. Jane Mufumadi. I take this opportunity to welcome you all in this very important discussion, the session that has four powerful women who will be taking us through their journey of women leadership. But before I do that, just to acknowledge that I stand on a protocol that has been established here, but just to add an acknowledgement of our Vice Chancellor, Professor Robert Balfour. Thank you for taking the time to honor this, and the whole university executive that is here today. Mine is to direct this program, but as I do that, we are being hosted in the Western Cape, and we have a representative from the Western Cape government who will be doing a message of support for this program. And she is ready to do her words of welcome for us to feel welcomed, and also expressing her own support for the program. We have Minister Melanie Wagner. Can we give her a round of applause, please?
Thank you very much. To the leadership of the Charlotte Manya Maxeke Institute, distinguished guests, esteemed leaders from government, from business, the arts, academia, ladies and gentlemen. It is a privilege to join you as we honor a woman whose story continues to shape our country, Charlotte Maxeke. Charlotte's extraordinary life taught us that education is much more than personal advancement. It is a means of liberation. She showed us that true leadership is more than occupying a position. It is a commitment to justice for all. As the first Black South African woman to earn a university degree, she laid a foundation on which thousands of women have built their futures. She used education to teach, organize, and advocate. She challenged past laws, defended workers, advanced women's rights, and worked for the welfare of young people. Her story did not end with her. It lived on in the women who marched to the Union buildings in 1956 and confronted a system designed to control their movement, limit their choices, and diminish their dignity. The women of 1956 understood that systems, laws, poverty, and discrimination could stop people from realizing their potential. 70 years later, their courage calls us to ask the same question in a different time. What systems still prevent our children and communities from realizing their potential today? A girl may be free and equal under the law, yet still be constrained by hunger, violence, poor health, an unsafe community, or a lack of opportunity. She may possess those rights on paper while facing barriers that make those rights difficult to realize in her daily life. That is why the right to health cannot be understood simply as access to a clinic or hospital. The International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights, to which South Africa is a state party, recognizes everyone's right to the highest attainable standard of physical and mental health. This right extends beyond healthcare to the conditions that enable people to live healthy and dignified lives, including nutritious food, safe housing, clean water, education, and access to information. When a child is chronically undernourished, their health, learning, and future opportunities are affected. When a young person grows up surrounded by violence or substance use, their well-being and ability to participate fully in society are placed at risk. History, therefore, matters to policy. Children do not choose the circumstances into which they are born, but those circumstances can shape their health and opportunities for years to come. Given South Africa's history, leaders have an ethical and moral responsibility to develop public policy that responds to the conditions that restrict freedom and give the next generation the best chance of reaching its full potential. In the Western Cape, this understanding is central to our commitment to help children to start well. One example is Khulisa Care, our initiative to address stunting and poor maternal and infant nutrition. The stunting rate in children under 5 is 27% nationally and almost 18% in the Western Cape. Our children's futures are at risk. Children affected by stunting are less likely to complete school, more likely to experience poverty as adults, and at greater risk of chronic illness. It reflects the cumulative effects of inadequate nutrition, poverty, stress, and limited support during one of the most important periods in a child's development. Khulisa Care, which means to grow in isiXhosa, supports vulnerable mothers during pregnancy and the first 6 months of their baby's lives. It combines food vouchers for protein-rich foods with regular visits and support from community health workers. By establishing essential nutritional foundations in the earliest chapters of a child's life, we hope to prove a model that can level the playing field and give every child the strongest possible start. The same principle guides our work through Planet Youth to prevent substance use and violence while strengthening protective factors around young people. We surveyed nearly 50,000 grade 8s and 9s across the province and asked their experiences of home, school, their exposure to violence, and also the people that they trust. And their voices are shaping our response. As the teenagers, enter their next chapter, we want to empower them, protect their well-being, ensure that they understand the value of their own voices. Charlotte Maxeke and Mary Robinson, who will be joining us shortly, were born in different countries and generations, but their work meets in the shared conviction that human dignity must be translated into action. Both challenged systems that excluded women. Both demonstrated ethical leadership grounded in justice. Both used their influence to bring the experiences of ordinary people into places of power. The unfinished work before us is to translate human rights into the lived realities of every person. Those who lead today have a responsibility to make space for those who will lead tomorrow in our homes and communities and across our continent and global institutions. Our stories do not end with us. They continue in the people we serve, the systems we change, and the opportunities that we create for the next generation, whose stories are only just beginning. Thank you.
Well said, Minister. The story is just beginning. And without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I will now hand over to my esteemed guests. They each have 5 minutes to kind of introduce themselves and just give us a brief about their journey in leadership. They each have 5 minutes to just take us through their own experiences as leaders in their respective fields. They all have a wealth of experience. They are outstanding leaders of society, and they are women. But as a way into their own stories, as we all kind of acknowledge the fact that women's story are not an end in themselves, but they pave the way for other possibilities. And I want to concur with that sentiment, which is a unique trait of women in leadership. that they create an enabling environment. You know, whenever we talk about the story of Charlotte Maxeke, we talk about a story that we see it as a gift that never ends giving. She's been a gift to us as young researchers. She has been a gift to us. She has been a gift to the world. And I think what we have learned from the previous session, you know, there is a commitment to want to emulate her example. But from the video that we learned from that video that she was also inspired by Emmeline Pankhurst. You know, my background, I'm a historian. With a bit of research that has been done, just poking beyond Maxeke to just get a sense of who were the women that inspired her. Having spoken to Emmeline Pankhurst, who is a renowned kind of British suffragist leader, she was one of the leaders that led the women's suffragist movement in Britain. But I went and checked against the time frame that Marshall Maxeke was in England. You know, what would have been the conversation in England at that time? It was a time when the British suffragist movement had won, you know, the right for women to be representatives in public offices. But the conversation between her and Mayor Pankhurst was very critical of the British suffragist movement at that time. That as women were being granted the right to participate in public offices, there was a deliberate ploy to want to stall their development. And that was Mayor Pankhurst's own critique of the feminist movement, that being granted the right to sit in those public offices didn't end there. You know, so with that inspiration, I think for me, it went beyond the two women, the two icons of the 19th century to today, that women are not complacent. They keep on pushing the boundaries. And without taking much of the time, we're going to hear from the leaders themselves what their experience of being a leader in their respective field. And I think I would start with you, Sis Nolita. You know, what has been the experience of being in the corporate, because I'm deliberate starting with her in the corporate sector. What has been the experience? You have a wealth of experience of over 3 decades of being in the sector. If you can just lead us with a discussion on how your experience has been. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Tozama, and good afternoon to everyone who's here, and in particular, I would like to recognize my fellow sisters here. In fact, I don't want to go into the CC thing, because I'm indeed their sister, Minister Maropene, and my sister, Advocate Koleka, and my sister, Tembi. We definitely come from far together over the years. When they were still students, some of them are in the student movement, and I had just started as a manager, as you said. I also want to acknowledge Her Excellency, former President Mary Robinson, who's the elder, and as she walks in, I'm grateful that she's walking. Welcome, ma'am. As you will hear from my story, the whole issue around elders and positions in society works for me very well, and you have been one of those elders that I have looked up to as well, and most of us do. And also another elder in the room, even though he may not like that, is Justice Albisex. It's good to see you and have you here with us as well. And I'm going to stand on the protocols that have been already observed. Suffice to say, even it's important because our host, the Vice Chancellor of UWC, Prof, thank you very much and for you for being here. So the statement around the topic of today, which is my story does not end here, and the legacy of Mama Charlotte Maxeke, is for me, very relevant in different ways. I'll mention 3, and please do check the time because I'll take up the time of the politicians if they are not careful. Firstly, my name is Nolita Fakude. I am from the Eastern Cape in a village called Qenyu in Stutterheim. I am the firstborn daughter of Nodumo Njoli and Mtunzi Njoli, and I was born 62 years ago. So I am the child of this whole Africa and South Africa. And I started working in 1990 in Cape Town, 9 months after Nelson Mandela came out of prison. That was a significant milestone for me as a black young woman coming into the corporate sector, because this was pre-1994, and this was at the time when corporates realized that they needed to change and therefore started integrating different cohorts of black graduate trainees to join their organizations. And so that's my career started here in Cape Town in 1990. And that was significant for me because Cape Town those days meant you wanted to find people who looked like you, who sounded like you, who talked like you, and it was quite difficult, if I may say. Fortunately, I found organizations, one of the civil society organizations called Black Management Forum, which was here in Cape Town. And within that organization, I found allies, men and women who were allies. And this was a theme throughout my career of finding black and white male allies wherever I went. And they became my mentors, my sponsors, and champions. And throughout that journey, I always say, were it not for the enabling legislation of the post-1994 government, the ANC government, of equality, which meant I was part of the employment equity cohort, I don't believe I would be sitting here today talking about the kind of career that I have. So I think we need to acknowledge the enabling environment that needs to be set in place in all societies as we talk about equality, inclusion, as well as diversity. I've had the privilege of, therefore, having access and proximity in boardrooms and within different environments. And with that access and proximity, for me, the responsibility of being the firstborn daughter coming from the village is something that was always inculcated in me, that as the firstborn daughter, you've got a responsibility to lift the rest of the family. We all know the firstborn daughters in different cultures. They're called aunties, dabs, makazi, and we are those people where abo mafungwashe, when you need to make a decision about getting married or buying a car, they'll say, have you spoken to your aunt? And a mafungwashe can either make that relationship to be a positive one for the family, because you unite the family and you are the voice of those who are not in the room. Or you can be really reckless around it and not be the voice of those in the room. So for me, I had to draw in from the fact that as a firstborn daughter and surrounded by white males at the time in boardrooms where I would think, but I am here with other people, I'm representing others. And so the women of 1956, amongst others, were for me and still for me the kind of anchor that I use when I go into channel into those boardrooms. So being here today, celebrating Mama Charlotte Maxeke, as well as Dr. and President Mary Robinson as an elder, is part of that circle. So using your access and proximity in a responsible way has been important. We talk about lift as you rise, but as you do that, you need to make sure what is your key agenda as you come into the environment to change the situation for the betterment of society. Women have always led with intentionality, meaning, and purpose. And I believe that all of us have had opportunity to do that in our roles. That's why my sisters, when they talk, they will also cover how they have leveraged their positions to really make change and impact for the rest of society. The other part for me that I really want to mention is that as much as we talk about the past, I was happy that the previous chair spoke about the fact that we should stop talking about the concepts of history, but talk about the future. I always remind colleagues that the past we inherit, however, the future we develop and own. And therefore, it's an opportunity for us, once again, to make sure that we do even better than the Mama Charlotte Maxeke's generation and others, because we live within different contexts and perspectives. Today, many of us are in leadership positions, and it's always important that we ask the question, how do we honor those who came before us by being through and lead with purpose, integrity, and more importantly, with impact, so that we're able to look back later and see the others who have come behind us because we had opened the doors for them through our commitments and actions. Let me pause there, Chair, and hand over to my sister, Minister Tembi. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Sis Nolita, our facilitator, fellow panelist members, VC, President, Prof. Thank you very much. My name is Tembi Smelan. I come from Bethal, a very small town in Mpumalanga, very famous for potato and the potato strike of 1959. We still farm, at least according to our will this time around. I can say that's a history that the town has only had. The difference is no one gets killed now and be buried and be manure for more potatoes to be plowed. So people who work in the field do that by their own choice. We still have a land question to resolve. Quite a lot of removals to what created the Mzinoni township where I come from, or where I stay, where my parents stay as well. It's a story of South Africa, which maybe fortunately, unfortunately, I'm responsible for in one way or another, because my constitutional mandate is to ensure, amongst other things, that I restore spatial justice. I ensure that I settle people in areas that are well designated, in areas that will make sure that we give everybody an equal start. Firstly, by providing a settlement where everybody can work, live, and play. But secondly, can be able to generate an income, can be part of the economic development structure of our country, and can also be able to give an opportunity to a child equally to a first start in life, to a safe environment. We work closely with municipalities in a form of support. We support in terms of that land acquisition. One of the key drivers in human settlement is land. And the lady next to me is very much unhappy with us among some of the decisions we've taken. So we've looked inward in terms of trying to minus the cost of purchase of land, but rather utilize first the land that is available in government pocket or pockets of land parcels. We have almost around 300,000 now that Public Works is transferring to us, and HDA for human settlement. But our key drive is ensuring that we get land that is 30 kilometers inwards towards town, to make sure that our people can benefit from the transport system, don't spend most of their income moving in and out of the areas to try and develop themselves, whether you're a student, whether you are a a young person having started working. So you'll find that almost all our social housing parcels are in town. Yes, we don't neglect. We'll have one in Philippi, we'll have in Khayelitsha, but our key center is, in the example of the city of Cape Town, will be to fight for a land parcel that is right in town, so that we can do social housing and assist historically disadvantaged to be able to be closer to the city center and the convenience and the benefit that it gives. Tembe, a leader, I think I came out by mistake of the birth of where I come from, and parents who made a choice themselves to be activists. I once had a discussion growing up with my mom, and she was saying, I think this thing, you must stop it. And I was saying, you know what? If you had gone to church, Nkosikazi, and really were a full worshiper, I'm sure I would have found somebody in church. Not in politics, because I'm last born at home. I'm not Mafunga Sengiyahlupa. So Masunga no, Mafunga Songuwe, you must look after me. So I'm the one who must come and ask for permission to buy a car or to get married or to do any other thing. I'm not sure if I did enjoy life. I never stayed with my parents because they were activists themselves. So we're raised by my uncle and my mom's elder sister, almost all the siblings. Mom has dual citizenship in Swaziland and South Africa. So yeah, two of my elder brother and a sister, I can actually say they're Swatis. Or they were, because they've both passed. The two of us, my brother and myself, had a bit of high school in South Africa and subsequently our university education. So I don't remember a day where I wake up out of curiosity, either with friends, and say, I'm going to join the struggle. Today, I'm going to be. I don't have that experience. I was born there. I don't think I was given a choice. But I have got no regrets about choices that my parents made, about choices that I followed in their footsteps. I think it is important. It was an important journey. As Nolita said, the history we inherit, but the future, we shape it ourselves. I try in my small little contribution to make sure that the 2.3 million South Africans who are looking for various sets of land parcels and human settlement support, that's what I do on a day-to-day basis. Every Thursday and every Friday, I'm in a community either giving a title deed or formalizing a settlement or handing out a house. But what I've also realized as we hand over houses, actually we have started having that discussion with the Department of Agriculture, is that you give a house and you leave beneficiaries in poverty. There is a strong correlation in what we do in providing a house and the level of high unemployment. They are inside the house, they are many in number, they are extremely poor. So we are trying, together with water and sanitation as well, to put the retrofit a sanitation system where we can then give gardening packages so that they can be able to start and rehabilitate. Environment is joining in. We're trying to, distribute around 2 million trees, particularly fruit trees. Obviously, there will be some indigenous trees in there. If you land in your flight to Cape Town or anywhere else, you see boxes of houses, they are peach in color. There's not even a single tree in between those houses. And I think we're trying to change that scenario as well. We have accelerated in the handover of our title deed to give back the dignity, not only to the post-dispensation, but also, I think possibly towards the end of the year in January, we'll be doing our first handover, Minister, of the old townships. Old townships that will be Rankuwa, Yomtansane. They never had title deeds. You will recall there were 99-year plus permission to occupy. It's quite a lot of financial burden to us, but we feel that is a cost for freedom that government must be prepared to pay. So we're almost close to wrapping up what you call former Bophuthatswana. It will give us no less than 500,000 title deeds to those South Africans. We're running it jointly with Gauteng and the city of Tshwane and Northwest in some of the areas where Bophuthatswana now belongs to the province of Northwest. In short, that's who Tembi is and what she does. Thank you. Oh, yeah.
Thank you very much, Program Director. Allow me to observe the elders. Let me take cue from the elder, started off, Her Excellency Mary Robinson and Justice Albie Sachs, and distinguished guests, fellow panelists. I don't want to take much time greeting. I'm Kolega Galega. My mother named me Nompilo, but that name didn't become popular in the family. My sister was the firstborn Ekaya, named me Kolega, and her name became popular. And Kolega means satisfaction. I'm the last born at home, coming from a home of, we're only 2 girls and 4 boys. So after having 4 sons, my mom really wanted to go. I don't know where I come from. I was born in Soweto, lived in Sophia town. My umbilical cord is buried Mzimkhulu at a village called Kwa James Nyangiwe. I grew up in Gauteng, I grew up in Umtata, and obviously at Mzimkhulu. So that's who I am. My parents were economic migrants in Gauteng. And I happen to live in Gauteng now as well. I grew up in a family that's deeply embedded in culture and religion. But being a last born, I'm not a conformist. My mom was a political activist, and so was her father. He was a secretary of the Ipoko at the time. Yeah. And this is really what shapes me. So when I irritate those in government, it's because that's really the culture and the values which I carry. It's said that you can't lead them if you don't know them, and you can't lead them if you don't love them. Now, being a last born, I'm actually a lot lamiki. My mom was 45 years old when she had me. So when my father passed on when I was 19 years old, and my mother when I was doing my 2nd year at varsity. So my siblings had to take care of me, and that then meant I had to fall into the hands of the state care, sort of. So my report on NSFAS speaks to me to the heart. I've experienced it. From my 3rd year and my final year, I studied through NSFAS. And I know what it means to a colleague out there. And that's why I so passionately worked on it and so passionately going to ensure that government implements.
Wow.
I am a product of affirmative action, like Mrs. Nolita said about herself. I started working as a prosecutor, which was the first job I applied for, the first job I got. And not because I was the most brilliant. At the time, Bulelani was working robustly on transforming the NPA. And the training program had a quota, and I was part of that quota. And I made it through that program. Out of 300 applicants, they only wanted 10 per station, and there's 9 stations in the country. But what's important is that I never lasted more than 2 years in a position because affirmative action was at play. They had to promote young black women. Firstly, I made sure that I make that number. I worked hard. But no matter how hard I worked, if there was no affirmative action, I wouldn't have made it. I became an executive at the age of 28. But it comes with a lot of trauma. You have to work extra hard and you need to prove yourself. Not just thrice, but more than that. And more than anything, I didn't have a black woman to mentor me. Because being a prosecutor at the Witwatersrand then, the entire executive were white males. So I had to fall into those hands. And fortunately, they didn't have a choice. One of my friends now, who was my biggest enemies at the time, Zeiss van Zyl SC, who mentored me, when I first arrived at the High Court, having been appointed as a junior state advocate, firstly, he informed me I was there because of affirmative action. And I told him how racist he was, but he was telling me the truth. And the first case he handed me, I recall, it was of a white police officer who had shot a young black man from a building in Hillbrow, and his defense was self-defense. And I had to decide the indictment, and I decided to charge. And Zeiss didn't agree with me. He said to me, no, it is self-defense. He showed me all the bricks that were on the pavement. And I said to him, bricks versus 5 gunshots at a close range, it cannot be. So the matter had to go to the Director of Public Prosecutions, who was Advocate Karen de Beer at the time, for decision, because him and I were not in agreement. And Karen actually agreed with me, and Karen said, no, the matter must proceed for prosecution. And then Zeiss was not happy. And it was my first case, and he allocated me Justice Ramokgopa. And he said to me, well, you must take this case to Ramokgopa, she's going to fix you. And I took the matter to court. I was not sleeping, preparing. And everyone who appeared before Ramokgopa, we had a tea time at 9. When they come back, you would see that your court was tough. So I was really scared going to court, but I went. And I was nobody's junior. I took that case on my own. But when I got to court, I did that matter with such ease. The guidance Justice Ramokgopa gave me, she literally held my hand. And each Monday morning when I got to the office at tea time, everybody wanted to see how saddened I was. And I was the happiest person in the tea room. And I kept on telling them, I'm coming back with a conviction on this matter. And indeed, it was my first case, and I got a conviction. But what drove me in that case was the history that my grandfather used to relate about the apartheid police, the brutality. And that's what I witnessed in how that young black boy was murdered by that police officer. I was passionate about it. I was more than a prosecutor in that case. But what lesson I learned out of that was to lead. You didn't need anyone to affirm you. You had to stand up for yourself and do it and say, this, I am going to do it. And that's really what has characterized my leadership. Even when some thought, no, she's not gonna make it, I thought, I'm gonna show them. And the institution which I lead now, the Public Protector, which I started leading in 2022, I found it as an institution in crisis. The implementation of the Public Protector's remedial action, which is the crux of our work, the impact of our work was sitting at 0.02%, and today it's sitting at 56%.
Wow.
The turnaround of our cases was sitting at about 78%, and today we're sitting at 90%. We had about 38 cases which were in court. Almost each and every report that was signed by the Public Protector was reviewed. Some were even questioning whether, is it correct for the Public Protector to have binding powers because every case is in court? And today I only have 4 cases which are up for review. But most importantly, for the very first time in the past financial year, this institution got 100% performance and a clean audit, which we've maintained even in this financial year. But what drives me is not the work which I have done or the traumas which I've carried, by the way, because I didn't arrive where I am alone. It's with all those traumas. But my passion is to develop young women, myself, so that they don't carry the traumas which I carry, so that they don't have to be reminded which man carried them to be where they are. And I'm very passionate about that. I'm committed about that. And I'm unapologetic about that, about giving young women tasks, helping them through those tasks, ensuring that they don't have to be scared to take decisions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This was wonderful. If I must say, she used to be a politician. So we grew up in the youth movement together. I remember the first time when we started engaging, we were not agreeing, 2008. That's how old we are. 2008, there was a conference of the president of EFF, by the way, was still with us. He grew up with us, and we were not agreeing. She wanted someone else, and I wanted the EFF guy. But anyway, but we have always been so proud of her because amongst ourselves, she was the lawyer, comrade, the lawyer. You know, and we were so proud, and we would always like the lawyer. So to hear her say all this is so wonderful. I must say we're really proud of, and we're really proud of everyone that is here. I'm surprised why I'm sitting here. I thought that I'm gonna be in the next session, but I will talk anyway because I know who I am. My name is Maropene Ramokgopa, and I grew up in a place called Leboahome it used to be called the Northern Transvaal, but now it's called Limpopo. And of course, my ancestral home is Ramokgopa, where Charlotte Maxeke's ancestral home also is Ramokgopa in Butokwa. You know, the Ramokgopas, we always say it's the era of the Ramokgopas. There's too many Ramokgopas now, but there is a village of called Ramokgopa. We've got myself as a Ramokgopa, who's the minister in presidency responsible for planning, monitoring, and evaluation. We've got another minister in Ramokgopa, who's not my brother. I always have to explain that. Minister of Electricity, and I'm also in the African National Congress. I'm the second Deputy Secretary General of the ANC. I've got the Treasurer General is another Ramokgopa again, not my aunt like people say. It's just that we share a surname. So I am more a product of women development, women pulling us up, women supporting us, and women always giving us an opportunity to make mistakes, to be crazy sometimes, and to always say whatever that needs to be said. But before I say that, let me first take this opportunity and acknowledge Your Excellency, Dr. Robinson. Also, of course, acknowledge our hero, the one whom we've all read about, and as we're growing in politics, we've always studied more about Justice Sachs. Let me also, of course, acknowledge the people that made this gathering to actually happen and to come true. So well done to Lasizwe and the team. We really are proud to be here. I am a middle child. I'm not a firstborn. I'm not a second. Everyone forgets. My mother will always ask, do you remember what you never talk about what I used to do when I was young? She said, we just knew you are fine wherever you are, because middle children, people forget them. I was actually told, Your Excellency, that some people, most of the people that have got depression and have got mental issues in mental hospitals are usually middle children, because they never really got the attention that they needed. I don't know why I never went through anything that is terrible, but I'm a middle child. I'm the second born of Ramokgopa and Ntate Ramokgopa, who are my parents, who are both from Botokwa Ramokgopa, although of course they went to Leboagomo because they had to work there. In those days, Leboagomo, of course, was the capital city of what was called Leboa, which was a homeland. They used to be called homelands. And of course, I like talking about being a mom more than anything else. More than I'm a daughter, I'm a mom of 3 beautiful children, a son and 2 beautiful daughters who have got so much to say about life, who tell me that it's not age appropriate, do this and do that. And I give them that precisely because I was also given an opportunity. As I say, I'm more a product of gender equality, but also youth development. I'm divorced now, but I used to be married. I stayed in a place called Northern Cape. I had to stay in Northern Cape. In fact, when I met her, they thought I'm from the Northern Cape because that's where I used to stay. And as I was there at the age of 21, or was I 20? I got married very early. I think I was 19 or so. So when I was there at the age of 21, I became a ward councillor. I've always been in government. I've worked, of course, for the BS because my ex-husband used to work there for a while. I became a ward councillor. So youth development was not just something that people spoke about to say it needed to happen, but I saw it with me. I was given an opportunity and I was supported. And I think this is where you really see what Charlotte Maxeke speak about, to say that as you rise, pull other people with you. It was not because there was anything special about me, but there were women who actually pulled me with them as they were growing up. I remember that I used to belong to, of course, the ANC Women's League, and those are the women that built me, supported me, Koleka and them, because they thought you have been sent around, been sent for tea. That's not really a good thing to do. But we did that. I'm laughing because I see Siskoli there, and she's laughing because they never understood. I stayed with those women because I knew they were supporting me, even if they would send me for tea, but I knew they supported me and they built me. At the age of 26, I was appointed, or I can't say elected, because we get to be deployed in the ANC as an executive mayor. I was still very young, but I was still supported by women, because they are the ones who fought to say that we think it is about time that you give a woman an opportunity to actually lead a municipality, and let's see how far it will go. They gave me that opportunity. I was still youth, but the support that I got in terms of making sure that they put people in my office that would be able to guide me in terms of policy, but also to guide me politically, but also in governance as well. And I must say, I am proud. Today, when you talk about the I think we've got about 282 municipalities. 257 municipalities. Let me say 257 municipalities. My district municipality is still one of those that always get a clean audit. And when I was there, it always got an adverse opinion when I arrived. First year, I looked at it. The second year, I worked with, I think it used to be the Auditor General was still, Mbombo. It was at the Auditor General Mbombo. And I went to him, how do you make a municipality to actually have a clean governance? And he brought his team to come to to the municipality I used to be in, stayed with us for 6 months, helped us to develop systems that would help the municipality to actually have clean audits, but most of all to have good governance. And within that space of time, the next year, we started getting clean audits, even today, because of the systems that we were able to build. So clean systems and good systems that are solid are actually what brings a good governance. That's what I learned ever since I started being in government. Yes, of course, I'm in politics. As I already said, the only other thing that I ever did was to become a diplomat. I was just sharing with Your Excellency here. So I've been in politics, I've been a diplomat, but I've also been in public sector. I used to work with that man sitting there. We used to work in the office of the minister, so I worked in international relations. It was the first time, in fact, where we really got to start saying, what can we do to come out and talk about Charlotte Maxeke? And we went to Wilberforce, that's what I was talking about. We went to Wilberforce to just go and see that school in Everton. Precisely because for us, she's not just a woman, nor as only just an academic, but someone who represented diplomacy, international relations, but black women as well, and women in general. And we went there to try and come up with a way that we could then now be able to ensure that her legacy is remembered, precisely because where South Africa is today, we cannot sit and say that she didn't play a meaningful role. If you go to Queenstown, and I'm sure your research will talk about, if you go to Queenstown, and I think just outside of Queenstown, there is a church there, and I think I was told that before the 1912 meeting in Bloemfontein, there was a meeting there in that small town where Charlotte Maxeke was there with the leaders that actually founded the liberation movement that have brought us what we are here today for. It is not documented, but she was there when you then now want to look at the history part and the attendance register of who did what when. And it is also said that in 1912 as well, and even 1910, she was there. So part of the many things that people would want to talk about the history of our revolution, but the history about the democracy that today we are celebrating here in South Africa, but generally in Africa, because if you can remember, what made ANC, I'm not talking politics, to be what it is, or the liberation movement, it was not something that was done by South Africans, but it was priests and traditional leaders from Africa that came together and say that, can we start something that can unite Africans so that we can wage a war against colonialism? That's what happened. It was to unite. More than anything else, it was not to fight, but to unite. So unity becomes important in whatever it is that we do. So I was a diplomat, went to India, I came back, then I had to be at the AU as the advisor to the president of South Africa, who was then the chairperson of the African Union. I came back home, I became his advisor. But one of the things that I think defines what I would like to share is how united or a force of unity can actually change a lot of things. In 2024, we do know what happened in South Africa. We went to elections, we came back, there was no outright winner. But when political parties came together and started talking to say, let's leave ideology aside, let's leave politics aside, let's talk about what unites us. And we all said that what unites us is to have a stable South Africa, and a South Africa that would be able to deliver for its own people. It is for this reason that we then now had a government of national unity. The negotiations were not easy, I must say. There was a lot of agreements. We would agree, others would leave. But at the end of the day, today we've got what we have. So with that, those little words, this is what I believe the issue of youth development, the issue of supporting other women, and making sure that we don't just give them opportunities, but we also surround them with what they would need to be able to achieve that which we have given them as a mandate is very necessary. But most of all, the issue of clean governments will always rely on what we call systems that are in place, systems that are clear, so that everyone else would have to know what they need to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you to all our guests. And I think what we take from all presentation is the importance of women asserting themselves wherever they are. I think what I'm picking up from all the speakers is the importance of being grounded. Advocate Galeka, you spoke about the importance of being grounded and then kind of carrying your cultural values, you know, the importance of that coming into a position of leadership. And Sis Nolita, the importance of taking the role, taking the role. Usually when you talk about leadership, leadership is a title, but there is a role, there's a function. And Simelane, you spoke about women and the land. And I think the land question, we always put women in the rest seat. And yet, Charlotte had a very interesting take on the land question. In 1935, when they met in Bloemfontein with the All African Convention, the topical issue at the time was the question of the voting rights for women. A.B. Kloma calls on Charlotte Maxeke to kind of motivate for the inclusion of women and their consideration, that they be considered for a vote. But Charlotte Maxeke, this kind of reorientated that debate to say, we can't be speaking about the vote when the vast majority do not have land. For she understood that, the Cape franchise at that time made it mandatory for one to have property in the form of land. So when you talk about political questions, the big political questions of the 20th century, Charlotte Maxeke was there to bring that voice. And I think there was a wonderful kind of affirmation of Charlotte Maxeke coming from Her Excellency Mary Robinson to say she was one of the greatest leaders of the 20th century. And thank you for that. We've been trying very hard. We've been trying very hard to try and understand the kind of a leader that Charlotte Maxeke was. And you have given us that concept, one of the greatest leaders of the 20th century. Thank you for that. And without any further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I see we're running short of time now. I'm just going to give 2 minutes of questions and reflections. I would have loved for us to go on a second round of questions, but we are pressed for time. I'm just going to hand over to the audience just to give 2 rounds of questions. Thank you. Where are the mics? Any question, comments, and reflections?
I would just like to start by honoring you guys. It's been such an infilling session today, from the morning session to this session. I keep saying, wow, 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 when I see the caliber of women that I'm sitting with here today. I guess my question is specifically to you, Minister. I see that your route into politics is unconventional, from starting from 21, going in being a ward leader and rising from those ranks. As a young person, I've been in the climate justice movement since I was 16 years old. I started my activism and I even got to travel the world because of that. When I was 18, I was honored with the Charlotte Maxeke Institute Women of First Award for being an extraordinary learner. And since then, I got an opportunity when I was 18 to choose my path, whether I go with the scholarship that I got from university or to continue my journey in activism and pursue what I wanted. So I did the responsible thing of sitting down with my mom first and asking her what I can do. And her answer to me was, school will always be there, but if you can, follow your passions now, because God will guide you and he will never lead you astray. And through that, I was able to be part of the Presidential Climate Commission, being the youth commissioner representing the youth voice of South Africa. And so, thank you. And I guess my question stems from, I'm in this position now in my life where I've got this wealth of knowledge. I've developed some experience, and when I look around, I'm always looking for women mentors, and it's very hard for me to find them because the backlash I always get is, what did you study at school? Or what did you do at school? So I would be really, really honored to just learn more about your personal journey and how we can popularize, I guess, different ways of rising in leadership, as well as putting the pressure off of young South Africans that you will be able to go to school when the opportunity presents itself. But if you are passionate about something now and you have the skill and the talent to do it, pursue it. And there shouldn't be a shame or stigma around that, saying that because you did not go to university means that you are ill-equipped or you do not deserve to lead. So I'm so grateful that you are that representation to me. And if you would be willing, I would be very, very looking forward to learn from you on how I can pursue this path of politics as well. Thank you.
Why don't you take the second one then so that we can...
There's a second one there.
I can still run. Thank you. So I don't think I was going to ask a question, Dr. April, but then after she spoke, I felt that there is, in fact, there are many women out there, who are leaders in our communities, including myself, who really struggle when I listen to women like you. I think I struggle at a point of like, where do we connect, as women? Because, so I'm not saying your experience is irrelevant, but how does your experience that is relevant gives validity to my experience? Because when we're sitting and we speak about leadership, more often than not, what she has just explained, is not getting recognition, enough, because she has not been to a particular, institution that will give her a piece of paper, at the end of the day. And I feel there is a responsibility or an ask that we must have around re-engineering or repopularizing the recognition of prior learning, 'cause, like, I'm just imagining her sitting there, someday, where she's got this kind of diverse experience, and she speaks about acquired leadership through, day-to-day leading at grassroots level. And combining that with what she would have acquired from Stellenbosch or UWC, So when I'm saying I'm struggling to connect, it is not because that doesn't matter, but in South Africa today, with the challenges that we are having and the apathy that is there in communities, because we are losing interest, and some of the things and the good stories that we hear, they are losing relevance, because we have not kind of revived the feminist movement in the country, that we become one as women and we lead together. So it doesn't matter which space maybe a woman finds herself in, but there is that organizing that is at the center of what we do, where we know the messaging is being amplified. If you are in prosecution, you are amplifying that gender equality message. If you are, in human settlements, like I was listening with interest, how many women are actually being prioritized in human settlements? Because we know that we've got a lot of female-headed households. But then in this female-headed households, how many women are in informal settlement? And how does a woman like you, who is leading in human settlements today, ensuring that women that are in informal settlements, they get to settle in a decent household, you know? But I think the issue of recognition of prior learning is so, so important, and I'd be happy if like the Institute can actually take this as a priority. Find those women who are in South Africa today who are doing work, but when those women need recognition, then they don't get to be recognized because that piece of paper is there. But if you were to compare their expertise and the lived experience with someone who's sitting in an office who is supposed to be performing work, they would do so much better because they know what is expected. Thank you.
Any takers?
Okay, all right, maybe let me start, and I'll try to just touch briefly on the two, because the last question also had a bit of some human settlement data need, but also a balance in terms of education, recognition of prior learning, support for women. I think we need to try and find a balance of both acquiring the experience, but also making sure that we get qualified. It can even be at the basic minimum, really. In 2026, we can't say matric is a basic minimum. We are pushing for professionalization of government, both in the public sector and even in local government. There are even bold political parties that have even set targets of requirements that if you are a councillor, you have to meet. She must have been a councillor in the first 25 years of local government, because local government started later than the constitution after 1996. The white paper was in 1998. The unfortunate thing about podiums is that they don't show you the work behind the scenes. And it just makes look like Advocate Galega just walks into this office and everything is so nice and everything is so... There isn't a way of portraying how a movie is being produced, because we all get to see the end product, the polished product. I mean, for me to be in local government, the ANC, I woke up one day, they said, come here. From tomorrow, you are the mayor. Anything, if you ask me how many words are there, is soft-taught. I had to sleep on top of books of local government because I had no experience at all. The municipality at the time, I think, had a budget of about 6 billion. It was owing ESCOM, owing water, owing anything you can imagine. And I had to make it work. But without really undermining experience, I wouldn't have made it if I was unable to read. Right? Because there will be a document, there will be any other thing that I wouldn't be able to understand and interpret. So I think you need to cement it, baby. While chasing your ambition, the drive for the experience, you also need to chase the qualification. In fact, in South Africa, we're in the meritocracy era now. Yesteryears, the lady sitting behind you used to be our DG there at the Department of Public Services. She knows it by heart, the requirements, at least at what the state needs. Even an advisor to the minister or a personal assistant, you are required to meet a certain qualification requirements, right? Yes, we do RPL, but I do get a sense sometimes when you talk to RPL, and the VC will tell you they are in the educational space, they will know it and define it much better than I can be able to do. It is a process of education itself. Hence, you have got to write, you have got to do the assessment, you have got to be assessed before you could be ascertained to be meeting or to be at a particular level. It does give that balance, but it is a process as well. I haven't seen of a RPL that takes less than 3 years. It is not there. So if a degree costs you 3 years, the same process for the recognition of prior learning, there's no shortcut here. You can imagine my grandfather, he used to build houses. Now, if he wants to go to NHBRC, my regulator, for him to qualify to build a house for you, he needs no less than 4 years. If I take a shortcut, that house will collapse on top of you sleeping. You will die. It will be irresponsible. And it does not mean his skill may not be, but there were techniques also that would have developed in time that needs to be infused with your experience, the knowledge from class, so that you could be certified for a prior learning. In the 5 million that we have built, 3,200 houses are for women. 68% of the BNG program in South Africa, beneficiaries are women. It's automatic, that's what our policy says. We actually link even right to a Tutuzela daycare center. If a woman, for example, has been affected by GBV, or there's even femicide. Sometimes women are killed and leave children behind. Our policy says prioritize that child because the mother couldn't build a house for him or her as a boy. Yes, we take them through to the care center because to give them an empty and a shallow house without a caregiver, it's a problem. So we keep them in the state, but it's our requirement as the state to house them. That's how much recognized in policy women are. It's a pity that we can't talk about everything else at the same time, but I think we are there. We obviously still have to work tomorrow and day after to make sure that we reach and touch everybody else. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, my baby, you need the certificate, unfortunately. When I left home, I wanted to be a fashion designer. In fact, I met my ex-husband at university. So you do need that. When I became a mayor, I had to go to Vets Business School so that when the CFO comes and tell me about the budget, I had to understand what they are talking about. So there was a program that they developed for us. It was at an NQF level 6 that we had to do, municipal finance. So it is true that we don't necessarily talk about all this. Recognition of prior learning is quite important, but your talent is very important. But what you need is just the certificate to back you up, to give you the methodology. When I became a consul general, because I dealt with trade, I had to go to another business school to go and learn more about the trade. I did get an advanced diploma in business management. Now when I sit with business people, I'm able to talk to them in their own language, precisely because I needed the methodology. My talent is important, but to understand the industry, you do need that certificate. I always say to my kids, just go get the certificate, give it back to mommy. I'll shelve it somewhere. You can then now go and do whatever it is that you want to do. I will support you because talent is important and it must be nurtured. I'm willing to be your mentor. I can definitely hold you by the hand because I was someone also held my hand and took me where I needed to be. Thank you very much.
Well, ladies and gentlemen who have come to the end of this session, how I wish we had more time to tease out, we were just beginning. I felt like it's just, we don't have enough time. How I wish we had more time to kind of elaborate more on the kind of leadership, the diversity, of experience, that we have just been introduced to. And with that, I just want to wish to thank all of our guests for a very insightful kind of presentations, and then the questions and reflection. But as we end this session, I will now invite the Vice Chancellor. We almost missed the Vice Chancellor, who had also been earmarked to give a word of support and say a few words for this session. But as we descend the stage, we're going to ask the Vice Chancellor to take the podium. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you.
My life is a book for you to read. Turn the next page and you will be surprised to find that your name is written in my heart.
You can't run very far, my love will get
I can
you.
run away.
You can't run very far, my love will get you. Tell me, where did we go wrong? Tell me, where did we go wrong? Tell me, where did we go wrong? Tell me, where did we go wrong?
We just need to get the mic working. Am I audible to everyone? All right. It's an enormous pleasure to be here this afternoon. If I think about my own development as a leader, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for the women in my life. I think every mentor, every referee, every excellent boss I've ever worked for has been a woman. So the opportunity today to welcome you to the University of the Western Cape is a special one. And honorable ministers, our esteemed public protector, the Chancellor of the University of the Witwatersrand, the President of Ireland, the Ambassador for the Irish Diplomatic Mission in South Africa and his team. Our wonderful team, Prof. Mauritsau, mentioned by name, Prof. Heidi, Prof. Pramesh, Lemise, Michaela, everybody from Institutional Advancement and the CHR, thank you for making this happen today. It's 125 years, can you believe it, since Charlotte Maxeke graduated from Wilberforce University. We also meet in this wonderful place today, hosted by the Center and the Charlotte Maxeke and Mary Robinson Research Chair. The organizers, I've noted, have put a question to every speaker. What has this generation done with what it inherited? And I want to answer it twice with you, and through that, to speak about a part of the inheritance that's sometimes left unspoken. The tray was never intended as a memorial. It grew out of a long partnership between this centre and the Trinity Long Room Hub in Dublin, with funding from the Irish Department of Foreign Affairs. Its purpose is to ask, through the humanities, how two societies might think of their histories of colonial rule, the histories that were followed by partition in one case and apartheid in the other. There's also a personal thread to my remarks. When the Tunishte, His Excellency Michael Martin, delivered the inaugural lecture here in 2023, he recalled that Trinity College had given the late Professor Kader Asmal an academic home during his 27 years of exile. Kader Asmal founded the Irish anti-apartheid movement while teaching in Dublin, and then he returned to South Africa as a professor of human rights at UWC, before, of course, becoming minister of two important ministries in our first administrations. So the chair gives us an institutional form for a relationship sustained by individuals over many decades. This is one way a university like ours can give meaning to the words, "My story does not end here." Women's liberation and the widening of dignity is the next part of my theme for this afternoon's address. And the women's movement that Charlotte Maxeke helped to found challenged the idea that a person's place in society should be determined by the category assigned at birth. That struggle formed part of a broader movement towards equality and human dignity, one that later generations would extend to expand also to sexual orientation and gender identity. And this is part of that story, which I hope can also include people like me. South Africa's 1994 interim constitution was the first in the world to prohibit discrimination on grounds of sexual orientation. Section 9 of the 1996 constitution carried that protection forward. President Robinson's own story runs along the same line. As a young lawyer, she represented David Norris when the European Court of Human Rights found Ireland's criminalization of homosexuality unlawful. And as president, she signed the 1993 Act that removed those offenses from Irish law. Yeah, we should say thank you. Now, this matters still today because the issues are still contested. A survey released in June by the HSRC in South Africa and the other foundation in South Africa found that attitudes towards LGBTIQA plus people have improved over a decade, while acceptance in families and in cultural life has barely moved. The people most vulnerable in terms of our statistics, in terms of domestic violence, are often people from trans communities. So the law seems to have traveled much further than everyday experiences of belonging. And what this has helped me to see is that the struggle for queer rights has never been a separate chapter in the story about women's liberation. In fact, if I think about it, I found my way through the writings of feminist women scholars, people like Gloria Anzaldua, Diana Fuss, Judith Butler, and locally in South Africa through the wonderful examples of leadership and activism by people like Beverly Palesa Ditsi, who was born in the same year I was born. And more recently by people like Maxeke Steve Emily Letsike, also a member of our government. It is the same argument about dignity carried by a later generation to people of an earlier generation, even though it had not yet been named in that way. And I sum it up as follows: demonstrate the inclusion of the oppressed through solidarity with the oppressed. Demonstrate it. Yeah. I don't know why I've suddenly run out of voice this afternoon. I've barely begun speaking. But what does this ask of a university? This imperative to demonstrate inclusion through solidarity on that continuum of oppressions. What does it ask of women? What does it ask of men? Charlotte Maxeke's own route to a degree was shaped by experiences of exclusion. Universities can also produce exclusion, sometimes without even acknowledging it. But we do have a choice to confront it openly. As a university leader, I believe our responsibility is an intellectual one, but it's also a practical one. We must sustain the scholarship made possible by the chair we celebrate today. And for me, this is what makes leadership turn from an intellectual exercise into an institutional practice, that we articulate the matters we must confront so as to move closer to a culture that is authentically inclusive of the oppressions on that continuum. We honor the inheritance we celebrate today by extending it. We extend Charlotte Maxeke's argument beyond her lifetime into our current lives. It continues to reach us, and it's a task that we must protect, we must support, especially in contexts where the othering turn. I want to mention this phrase particularly to you, where the othering turn that we see taking shape in global politics, even sometimes in our national politics, the othering turn pressures us not to include and to exclude. We must resist it. We must affirm that need to act demonstrably in solidarity with all forms of oppression. Thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you, VC, for welcoming us, and we feel very welcomed. And I like your reflections on where we have kind of stalled on the legislative side, especially on the issue of the vulnerable groups in our society. And I'm happy to really acknowledge in our midst women who are holding the space of ensuring that the rights and the dignity of the vulnerable in society are kind of taken care of. There's a movement of women who have kind of ascended to the call by Ms. Charlotte, right? That of ensuring that as you rise, you bring someone with you. and there's a real existing movement of women who are doing that work in our respective communities. And I just want to acknowledge them here. I will not mention them by names, but they are living up to that principle of rising as bringing up someone as they're rising. And with that being said, I am now going to call upon the ambassador, Mr. Ambassador Austin Gormley, who is the Irish ambassador to South Africa. He will introduce our honorable guests, the Honorable Dr. Mary Robinson. Over to you, Ambassador. Thank you.
Mulweni, Sanibonani, Ninjani, Dumalang, as we say in our part of the world. It's a real honor and pleasure to be here today. I want to acknowledge the Vice Chancellor as well for hosting us at this wonderful university. Also, we still have Minister Wenger here. We've had other ministers of government, the Public Protector. We have President Robinson. And we have you, distinguished guests. So it's our honor to be associated with this event at the UWC. I would also like to just acknowledge the CMMI and Tula, if he's still here. For all the hard work. I know you haven't slept too much recently, but you've done a huge amount of work to pull this together along with UWC. I suppose this is particularly timely as we celebrate Women's Month. Watinta Pazi, Watinta Mboko. I would firstly like to congratulate President Robinson on the conferring tomorrow of an honorary doctorate at this August institution. This conferring is particularly fitting, as was said, because this university and the Centre of Humanitarian Research, Humanities Research, has a very special link with Ireland. It's the only Irish Studies Centre in sub-Saharan Africa, and it's located here in UWC. So it's a very special place for us. We were delighted also that the Centre and the CMMI decided to host this dialogue with Mary Robinson, and also want to thank all of you who were involved in putting this together. Mary Robinson and Charlotte Maxeke were both pioneering leaders who left a profound and lasting imprint. They've done so not just in their home countries, but also in looking outwards. Obviously, in Mary Robinson, through her role as President of Ireland and as UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, and also her membership of the Elders. She has campaigned tirelessly on global issues such as climate justice and human rights. Charlotte Maxeke, as we know, through her Pan-African perspective and focus on African solidarity and self-reliance, has done similarly. Both women are passionate about the promotion of social justice, equality, and human dignity. The focus has always been on the furthest behind and on the most vulnerable. As we've heard, Charlotte Maxeke became the first black woman to earn a degree, and she formed the Bantu Women's League to advocate for women's empowerment. She would no doubt have appreciated Mary Robinson's focus on education as a means to empowerment, as well as her moral courage in speaking out for the most marginalized. I think May Maxeke would also have welcomed the change in perceptions about the leadership role of women in public life that Mary Robinson has encapsulated, as she did in her time. Mary Robinson's election as the first female president of Ireland in 1990, in a way anticipated, but also helped usher in a period of profound social change in our country. And I can say that certainly for my mother, she grew up in a very different country than my daughter will inherit. And many women have contributed to that, including some in our family actually, but Mary Robinson first among them. So thank you for everything you've done to transform our country. The theme of the presidency of Mary Robinson was a more inclusive and just Ireland and wider world. This certainly embraced, in a sense, it was framed by the empowerment of women, which echoed Charlotte Maxeke's struggle a century before. Many people we know, including women and girls, were inspired by their example of leadership. We don't know how many, but we do know it to be significant. And in fact, one of my colleagues in an embassy was in Soweto, in Sophiatown, last Friday, and she met a leader of the African Women in Dialogue, a community leader, who recalled your visit, and again, your solidarity that you showed to the people of Soweto at a time when few international leaders were actually paying much attention to what was going on in that particular township. I have taken the liberty, President, to imagine some words to describe both you and Charlotte Maxeke, because I was asked to look at your tenure and your life through the eyes of Charlotte Maxeke. The obvious first one is justice. That justice in a pursuit of a world of dignity, human rights at the core. Charlotte Maxeke certainly promoted African empowerment, and in particular women's and collective action, women's empowerment and collective action for freedom, equality and social justice. Mary Robinson spoke of Ireland as a moral and political conscience in world affairs. She's lived that out very much in terms of her focus on African development and on climate justice. Courage and compassion, unflinching courage and determination in the face of misogyny, injustice, discrimination, racism and bigotry. Both women demonstrated impressive tenacity, I would say, in the pursuit of their ambition for a better world. Maxeke fought racial discrimination, advocated for the social and political advancement of black South Africans, and especially the advancement of women. And I think if Maxeke were alive, she would have welcomed the choice of Mary Robinson for the positions that she's held internationally, and also the choices of the campaigns that she led. The strong focus on African-led development and African agency would have resonated deeply, I believe, with May Maxeke. For many people in Ireland and elsewhere, Mary Robinson's compassion and courage were encapsulated during a visit to Sudan in 1992. And at the time, there was a tragic famine in the country and unrest. At some personal risk, she traveled to the country to witness the devastation wrought by that famine. And she told the world's media what she saw deeply offended her inner sense of justice. And she expressed an outrage that I think a lot of people felt at the time. The President also visited Rwanda in 1994, just after the genocide, and 2 times in the mid-90s. And I had the honor to be part of one of those visits. And again, it was with a similar purpose of highlighting these issues which may not otherwise have had the airing that they received. Humility and dignity. Humility, in a sense, I think both women were aware that the aspirations they reflected were unrealized over many generations, and that they were standing on the shoulders of great, and also they needed to carry to the next generation. And as has been said, as Charlotte Maxeke said, if you can rise, bring someone with you. And I know for President Robinson, the concept of intergenerational solidarity and coherence is very important. Dignity, as in the spirit in all of us, that must be nurtured. Mary Robinson's concept of human rights being inscribed in the hearts of people reminds that the essence of our collective humanity lies in embracing the dignity of the individual. May Maxeke, I think, would have recognized also the common spirit, and this common spirit in the struggles of South Africa and Ireland, struggles for freedom, for human rights, justice, the expression of our identity and culture, and also for forgiveness and reconciliations. I think Ireland and South Africa, if I may say, recognize each other in this struggle. Ireland, I Mukela, South Africa. We are profoundly connected by this common experience, as President Ramaphosa, this struggle, as President Ramaphosa said in his visit to Ireland last October. We are bound by a fraternal and eternal friendship. We're also bound to speak up in the face of injustice wherever we see it in the world, whether it's in Sudan, the occupied territories of Palestine, or in the impact of climate change on the most vulnerable. And we're also bound to work together, as Ireland and South Africa do, in the struggle against gender-based violence and in promoting women, peace and security. So, I'm getting to conclude because I'm in a very invidious position of standing between you and President Robinson. So I will conclude. But to say we are grateful for both women celebrated today and what they've reminded us about our common humanity, about the importance of activism and courage in the struggle to assert our rights, and in the sense that it's only possible to assert those rights by working and acting collectively. That spirit of Ubuntu, which is translated, we've translated in Irish as Mehel. In her ethical leadership, advocacy, and actions over many decades, including her anti-apartheid stance, Mary Robinson has carried the torch, in a sense, for the spirit of Charlotte Maxeke and others like her. In her inaugural address as president in December 1990, Mrs. Robinson said that Ireland has a fifth province. As you know, we have 4 provinces in Ireland geographically, but actually in Mary Robinson's imagination, there is a fifth. And it is a place where each of us, which is open to the other, the fifth is a province is a place in each of us which is open to the other, as well as one of reconciliation and healing. It's one that reminds us to be more inclusive, more tolerant, and more open versions of ourselves. It's a place of justice, peace, and love. And from what we know, that's a space in which Charlotte Maxeke would also have been comfortable. So the story does not end, of course, and with that, it is my great honor and pleasure to ask the president, former president, but president in our spirits of Ireland, Mary Robinson, to join us. Thank you very much. Siyabonga.
Well, we have come to the very, very last segment of our program. We are honored to have Her Excellency Mary Robinson on stage. The whole idea behind the fire, the idea is the idea that in traditional African setting, the fireplace, it's where conversations used to take place. So in the conception of this dialogue, for it to be kind of an emulation of that setting, we imagine ourselves sitting by the fireside with Mayor Robinson and Miss Nolita representing the voice of Ma Charlotte. And it's the idea to say that it's a president-to-president dialogue. We are all dialoguing around the importance of women leaders in society. And I just want to go back to what you said as a way of starting the conversation. You said you acknowledged Mayor Charlotte Maxeke as one of the greatest leaders of the 20th century, and you yourself having held that position. And I think the two of you give us the concept of a kind of political leadership in the 20th century. You give us the concept of what it means to be a woman in a highly dominated, male-dominated space of politics, So I just want, as a starting point, how important is it for the world to have women leaders? Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. Could I just begin by thanking the ambassador for the lovely way in which he linked Charlotte Maxeke, whom I have learned so much about this morning and this afternoon, and myself. I'm honored, and I love the idea of what you want to do with this chair, with the research, with the inclusiveness. All the values are really very important to me. But to your question, I think it's really important at the moment that we value and understand the importance of women's leadership. The world is in a mess. And why is it in a mess? Because it's got too much male leadership. And a lot of it is autocratic, short-term, populist, even misogynist in some cases. And so we need a balance. It's not that women are better than men, we're not saying that. What we're saying is that the world would be in a much better place if women had more positions in high office, in the highest offices and all the other offices, and at local level as well. I mean, it's all connected. And I feel passionately about this. And I regret the fact that the number of women leaders has actually come down a bit in the statistics in recent years. And I actually very much know how hard it is for young women to step up and say, I'm going to go forward for public office now because of the misogyny, the social media, the utter focus of threatening and, just the abuse. And it takes a lot of stamina and persistence. And I'm so glad that some young women are prepared to pay that price and say, I don't need to be popular, I'm just going to do what I believe in, and I'm going to do it as best I can.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Dr. Robinson. And again, just to contextualize the president-to-president conversation, in our minds as Africans and South Africans in particular, who adore Mama Charlotte Maxeke, she would have been president at some point in her life. When you look at her life and what she has done, she would have been president. And hence this conversation. And so I'm going to try and get from you, talking as an elder to your peer, or even just reflecting on your journey as well as the issues you've raised today, what would you say to her, and also some of the things that you would say we need to tell the next generation to do differently or better, or even more importantly, what is it that you believe the leadership generally, back to what the ambassador had said, could create a world where we have that fifth province? Because that's what we're all working towards, to have that fifth province in the world and have those kind of reflections. So I'm saying a lot, but I'm hoping you can talk and imagine that you are talking to her and we are here listening in.
Well, I can only imagine what it must have been like in 1903 to be the first woman to graduate, a black woman to graduate, South African woman to graduate from a university. It was a university in America, but she graduated, and she was that kind of, and it was clearly, from everything I've heard, part of a huge sense of wanting to not just give the leadership, but as you say, bring others with her. And that I felt was a very strong message this morning, and it's a really important message. I sometimes, I'm going to surprise you, I think, when I say, I'm sometimes asked for advice by young women. Do you know the advice I give them?
What is it?
It's advice I learned from Archbishop Desmond Tutu. Long before I became an elder, I knew Archbishop Tutu, and actually he came to Ireland several times. I met him there, but we also worked for African parliamentarians together, and we were on a kind of, actually a sort of elders panel before the elders.
Yes, okay.
But he had the great ability to make himself a little bit ridiculous, and people would laugh, and then when people were relaxed and laughing, and he was laughing as well, so they were laughing at him and with him, he would come in with his important message. And my sense is that young women around the world do not use humor at work. They're very funny at home. The laugh of the family, the jokes and all the rest of it. When they go into work, they're so serious. And then the young man comes in, and he's all relaxed, and he tells jokes, and he makes friendly, and he gets a promotion. And the woman has actually worked much harder, is more qualified, but somehow hasn't used that kind of humor that is so important, and it's so human. So maybe just to...
I'm quite intrigued, if I may, Dr. April, with that point, because again, thinking about your era when you were the president, and not only the first one of Ireland, but one of the few in the world who were women presidents. I can't recall, maybe 2 or 3 at the time.
There were 2 in Europe.
Two in
The president of Iceland and myself.
Exactly, and this is the world you actually led in. And you mentioned the point around humor, but for me, what always stood out, just physically, was the fact that you always wore the bright colors.
Yes.
You had your
That's true.
Your trademark
That's true.
pearls, but beautiful bright colored jackets.
I see I'm in bright colors over there.
Exactly, because it felt like you were rebelling against the
Yeah.
notion of that family portrait that
Yes.
often is taken at the
Yeah.
end of these
Yeah.
meetings, where all these black suits will be there,
Yeah.
and you wanted people to know that you were physically there,
Yeah.
as well as much as your voice
Yeah.
was there when the
Yeah.
engagements took place.
Yeah. That is very true that I had that idea, but I was very poor at knowing anything about clothes. So I had the intelligence at least to take good advice. And I took the good advice and I wore all Irish designers during the 7 years of my presidency. I didn't wear trousers. I almost always wear trousers now, because now I'm back to myself. But while I was president, I was very deliberately trying to project that sense of a feminine leadership, of I mean, from the beginning, I felt I can do as good a job as anyone, and a better job probably than, just because I'm a woman, it'll help me. All the struggles we've been part of, everything I've learned is going to help me be a better president for my people. I really had that sense, not arrogantly, but just out of a conviction, I'm here to serve, and I am going to serve my people as best I can.
Thank you for that. And again, because as young women, and you mentioned social media and how really within the social media space, women are said to be the ones who are more vicious towards other women, regardless of whether they're in leadership or in general life and society. And hence, I'm coming into the issue of humor that you're raising, because we come in as women already with this defensiveness,
Yes.
because you know that the world is against you and you're walking into a space that was not designed for you. And your life's example is saying you can be in spaces, whether they like it or not, but you can be in a space that when we are there, you make it work and make it count. I want to come to the point around the similarities between yourself and Mama Charlotte Maxeke around the social solidarity point, as well as the moral courage to take up issues that were not popular at the time.
Yeah. Well, I think perhaps the way I can link with what Charlotte Maxeke was doing is because I wanted to study law because I saw it as an instrument for social change. I wasn't interested in making money. I was interested in what law could do in making, and I was very lucky because the same year, I came back from the law school in Harvard, started to practice law, and the following year, I became 2 things. I became a professor. It wasn't a real professor, if I could put it that way. It was a trust from the 19th century of the parents of a student who had died in Trinity. So they put up the money to fund a professorship at the salary of a part-time junior lecturer, but called professor. So I was called professor, poor salary, and I was practicing as a barrister at the same time. And then I got elected to the Senate. I have to say, if I hadn't gone to Harvard, I would never have dared to put myself forward. I know that. I have to maybe tell a little bit about the influence that I was lucky enough to get a fellowship to Harvard. My parents wouldn't have been able to afford to send me if I hadn't. And I'm the class of 1968. Any young people around? Class of 1968, my master's degree. Anyway, 1967 to 68 was an extraordinary year in the United States. My American contemporaries were discussing and criticizing an immoral war, the war in Vietnam. Some of them were trying to avoid the draft. Martin Luther King was assassinated in April, and we wept bitterly. And then after I graduated, Robert Kennedy was assassinated, just after I graduated. So those were all influential moments, but what really inspired me was that my friends, the friends I had made, were not going into Wall Street to make money. They were going into civil rights and the poverty programs in the south of the United States. And they weren't going in sort of as young people to find a role for themselves. They were going in to lead. And I came back to Ireland full of what my husband-to-be, with a good sense of humor, what he called my Harvard humility. And it was my Harvard humility that caused me to question why, in 1969, when we had an election for the two houses of our parliament, why for the Senate was it elderly male professors who got the seats in the two university streams? So I ran as, a 25-year-old, a Catholic running in Trinity, which was still a slightly Protestant university, and a woman, for goodness sake. And all of those, barriers became an advantage, somehow. And again, I wore bright clothes as best I could, though I was a bit lawyerly, but the point I'm making is, I think Charlotte Maxeke, to me, was pushing things in a much more difficult climate in many ways. I mean, I had those kind of opportunities to benefit from and then bring back and try and make use of, like going to somewhere like Harvard, I don't know. I'm aware that we lived in very different worlds, but I think we were passionate about the same things.
Definitely so. And Dr. April here has written her thesis on Charlotte Maxeke, so she has a question as well.
Yes, thank you, Honorable Robinson. My question.
Everybody in Ireland calls me Mary, so that helps.
Mary. Okay, if you allow me. Mary, if I may ask, how important is this idea of adaptable leadership, that women have a way? You said something about having to work differently, in those 1960s where things were really heating up in the US and you had to work differently. And how important is this idea of adaptability? Because the notion is that women, they somehow analyze scenarios and develop strategies. And I think, how important is that? If you can just take us through that.
I think that's a very interesting question. And certainly I can answer it in terms of how I felt I had to change as my life changed. I loved being a lawyer, taking cases, and taking cases in the Irish courts, taking cases in the court in Luxembourg and in Strasbourg, mostly against the Irish government, and I tended to win quite a lot of them. I loved that life. And then I was put forward as a candidate for the presidency, and when I became president, I realized it's not like the presidency in the United States. In Ireland, it's a non-executive presidency. The political power is with the government, and the role of the president is a very interesting one, because you're directly elected under our constitution, but your powers are limited. So we were talking this morning about people using offices without labels, if I could put it that way. In a funny sort of way, the President of Ireland was an office which hadn't been properly labeled when I was the 7th president. I was determined to show that if you're directly elected by the people of Ireland, then you can do far more than my 6 male predecessors had done, at local level, at national level, at international level. That was, and it was but I was also aware I had to do it without causing political controversy. So the role had to be a more gentle role. And what I found was I had gone around the country looking for votes in 1990. That's what you do when you're seeking to be president. I didn't know my country very well. I knew Dublin, I knew the courts in Dublin, I knew my own county Mayo. I didn't really know the country as such. But luckily for me, I was nominated much earlier than the other two male candidates, including the Deputy Prime Minister, who was a shoo-in to be president. Everybody knew that. He was going to be president. But I was nominated, and I went around the country, and I discovered, and it's probably worth mentioning this, I discovered an Ireland that had benefited from the common agricultural policy of the European Union as it was, the European community as it was then. That had brought money into rural Ireland, and that money had caused rural, small towns and even villages to say, you know, we want the same facilities the cities have. We want sports for our kids. We want facilities for the elderly. We want facilities for people with disabilities. But they knew the government wasn't going to do it. And I found that there was this spirit of mehel, which was mentioned this morning. It is like Ubuntu. And it was my father who explained it to me. Both my parents were medical doctors. I'm not from a political family. My father explained, I used to love going out on long house calls with him to very poor houses in Mayo, where he knew there'd be no money exchange, but maybe a chicken at Christmas or something. But anyway, he would say, look at that field, Mary. Look at the farmers all gathered together on the one tractor. And the next few days, they'll go to the next field, and the harvest will be brought in. Even if some of the farmers are sick, their harvest will be brought in. That's mehel. And it was very,
That's Ubuntu in practice.
Yeah, in practice, yeah.
And in fact, in Xhosa, we have a concept called ilima, where when you're building homesteads, this week we will be building my house, mud bricks and all, and thatch, and then next week we are doing the same for you, and then the other week it's for somebody else.
Well, what this spirit of mehel meant in 1990, and it really was very evident, was people were volunteering to help to have sports facilities for the kids. They just got around and see what we could do together to do it. For Meals on Wheels, all kinds of things began to be emerging, etc. And I started to talk it up. And they said, oh, she understands, she's been listening, she understands. You know, they were hearing back what really mattered to them. And that was one of the reasons, I think, why I turned it from 100 to 1 outsider to actually winning the presidency at the end. But I just want to pause for a minute, if I may. I'm not even asked a question about it, but it's a passion of mine. And it's a current passion of mine. Really, really, really mehel, Ubuntu. When I was in Brazil for the Belém climate conference, it was Mutura. It has the same meaning. People have a real strong sense of community. But I want to give it a human rights grounding in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights in 1948. Eleanor Roosevelt was mentioned this morning. The Universal Declaration of Human Rights has 30 articles. They're mostly about individual rights, which are extremely important. You know, rights of the child, rights of women, of course. But probably because of Western and US influence, we had too much influence of individual rights. And I'm not, you know, don't get me wrong, I don't think you will. There is one article that deals with community, and we've ignored it. And I know it by heart. And I'll give you the version in
Please, give us that one so that we can all go and check it, please.
Well, I'll give you the version in 1948, and then I'll amend it to make it gender sensitive. Because in 1948, the Universal Declaration was not gender sensitive, despite Eleanor Roosevelt. She couldn't quite, parts of it are, but it's not as a whole. So here's what Article 29, the first sentence says. Everyone has duties to the community, in which alone the free and full expression of his personality is possible. So of course I say, and I'll read it again, everyone has duties to the community, in which alone the free and full development of their personality is possible. Which means you have to know that you have duties to the community, and when you do something about it, lo and behold, you reach the free and full expression of your personality. And I don't know how many people in Ireland have said to me, and I'd say it's here in South Africa as well, when you work with community, you get far more back than you give. Exactly. How often have we said this? You get far more back. What do you get back? the full expression of your personality. And why haven't we, as human rights advocates, champions, why is it so important now, for all the reasons I was talking about this morning, the misrepresentation, the false images, the fake this, that, and the other. Actually, the real truth is our relationships with community, duties to community, Ubuntu, I am because you are, as Archbishop Tutu would explain it. That link, that human link with each other is becoming so important. And we should ground it in human rights, and we should, so that's my passion. I do it mainly in the climate and nature thing, but it's applicable right across the board.
It is.
Yeah.
I think we need to explore that further in terms of how do we bring that to life, especially for us in South Africa, because we always say we've got one of the best constitutions in the world, and we believe that, and I believe that as well. However, there's always this disconnect between the rights of the individual versus the rights of society when it's negative,
Yeah.
because every one of these responsibilities obviously that come within those rights. And the point you are making around making sure that the community part of the Human Rights Declaration comes through, and we need to balance that within the sense of, as you have a different pathway to leadership, that pathway is relevant and valid like any other person. I think for me that's my take. And one of the questions, or two of the questions asked earlier on, around do I need education or do I need to do community work? And the answer has been you've got to do both.
Yes.
Because as much as you move on and continue to support your community, and in our society, and Mama Charlotte did the same. She was in the choir, so she left to go and to Europe on a musical choir tour, and then from there came back, got her sister, and then found a way back, and then she eventually, obviously, ended up in the USA. But when she came back, she knew to balance community. She was a community worker, she was an educator, a teacher, and also she's one of the founding members of the AME Church. I forget what it stands for, but it's what African Methodist, Episcopal Church. So she was really balanced, and she knew that in the church, the women, in particular, were the ones who would turn things around within communities, and also mobilize to pull in the spirit that we're talking about of bringing community together.
Well, there was a lot of emphasis this morning and indeed this afternoon on education, and of course I totally agree with that. I think we actually have to think, because of the threats of what's happening in the digital world, and somebody put it recently to me, and the expression shocked me. We have to protect our cognitive security. We have to protect our cognitive security. And I think one of the ways of doing it is in our educational system, somehow make it part of education to do duties to community, in schools, in youth clubs, in the. I'm not sure if this is a problem in South Africa, but in Ireland, there is a problem of young boys. We've had a terrible crash on our highway, and a couple of days later, Britain had the same thing, and 2 police officers were killed by a car driven by these youths up the wrong side of the highway. It's happening, and these youths are doing it. And I started to sort of discuss this, and I was really taken aback at how difficult it is for young boys to find something to be involved in. It's actually very difficult, because for insurance reasons, the problems sometimes of a country that's a bit richer is we get very protective. So you can't do an awful lot of jobs as a young person. You can work on a farm if the farm is owned. You can't go and work as a volunteer on a farm. You can't go and work in so many places underage because we're protecting the individual child, and so we should. But we have to find a compromise, and I haven't worked out. We need to engage young people, particularly boys, in that sense of community, of belonging, that gives back to them. You know, I'm growing. I can feel myself growing. I'm reaching the full expression of my personality. We really need to work on this.
The boy-child issue is a South African issue, and I'm sure a universal one, as we have indicated. So I'm pleased that you are mentioning it, because we are grappling with that also, as we see with the democracy that we've had, and I'll talk from the professional business side, where we are seeing a lot more women professionals come in, graduates, as scientists, as doctors, and accountants, and lawyers, and the young men are shrinking in that process.
Yeah.
And the question we've been having, my sister, Dr. Judy, here is part of a network of sisterhood that we have been talking about at International Women's Forum.
It's an international problem.
It's an international problem, but we are saying, who are these young women going to partner with in life later if their peers are left behind?
Yeah.
So as much as we are pushing for the young women to be moving forward, society has got to also not have a blind spot around the issue of the boy child. And I think if Mama Charlotte was still alive, she would have found a solution around it.
Yeah.
So you are helping us think that through using the lens of the human rights, Article 29. I think that's one of our homeworks. How do we work through that process? Thank you.
Yes, I really appreciate the point about the realization of one's a kind of full potential, you know, to kind of strive for that full expression of our humanity. And I think in Mama Charlotte Maxeke, I didn't know until recently that she was a musical composer, hymnal song in the hymn book of the AME Church. The hymn she composed, one of the hymns she composed, Pagama Africa, oh Africa Rise.
Yes.
So I'm like in agreement with that point of exploring, you know, the full potential of one's humanity, which can also be musical. And it goes back to what you were saying about young women professionals, that there's a sense of humor that comes into leadership. There's a bit of arts, there's a bit of creativity that comes to it, and I really take those as my, as I'm about to ascend the stage, I take those as the kind of lessons I take from this dialogue. Thank you very much for honoring the invitation and giving us these kind of very informative kind of experiences, drawing from your experiences and giving us lessons about women leadership. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
We could talk the whole evening. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Again, good afternoon, and thank you so much for such a fruitful conversation. Mine is just to present a beautiful gift to both of you, actually. First things first is, of course, our beautiful Protea flower. And since you're traveling, you know, we want you to keep it. So we got you a beaded one, and then we got Minolita real ones. And then while we're still here and celebrating women and celebrating women's excellence and women of first, just like yourselves, Charlotte Maxeke, as well as the woman who marched 70 years ago for our rights to work, the South African Reserve Bank has made a coin because it is 125 years since Charlotte Maxeke became the first black woman to graduate, and then 70 years since those brave women walked to the Union Building. So the Reserve Bank, as well as CMMI, saw it best to honor them in a way that is memorable, a way that we will never, ever, ever forget, and that's through money. So this is a commemorative coin. I will show the crowd also as well. Oh, thank you. Where Miss Charlotte Maxeke has the face of one of them. You know, she deserves her own coin, right? And then the other women are on the other coin, all four of them. It is such an honor, and I am so happy that both of you are holding such an amazing item.
Who's going to get it?
Oh, we'll give it to you. And then we do have, yes.
Well, I promise not to spend it.
Oh, thank you. But yeah. And thank you again so much. Oh, of course, and you can't leave without a T-shirt, right? So this is a historical graduate of 1901. Now you will never forget Charlotte Maxeke's face. So yes. I keep forgetting, last but not least. This is a book because Charlotte Maxeke was a woman of first, you know, and she paved the way, such like yourself. There are many other women in South Africa who also paved the way. So this is a book that tells their story about who inspired them and their work that they're doing. So 100%, yes. So I hope you read it on your flight back. So yeah. Yeah. And even signed. Even Dr. April.
Anybody else about the book?
Dr. April.
As we are closing, I would like to take this opportunity to thank everyone that has contributed to have this day, a successful day. From the bottom of our heart, this day was successful because of us this side, but also most importantly, because of people that have attended this event. So can you please give yourself a round of applause? Spending the whole day with us. We are hoping that we have started now a new way at CMMI. We'll want to have a branch in Western Cape for many reasons. One of the reasons is that when Sharon Maxeke came back from graduation, her first entry point was Cape Town. She couldn't move to the northern parts of or inland because of Anglo-Boer War. So she started her activism after graduation in this space. So this is now for us our second home. VC, our host, and the team, we really appreciate the support, buying into this idea of honoring Maxeke. The big day is tomorrow, but also buying into the idea of supporting this day today. President-to-president dialogue. It's a first, but not the last. And I would think that what Mayor Lolita has said earlier on, that we are not just elevating the name to the level of presidency. She deserved to be there. If she was still around, she was going to be the president of this country. So we are doing the right thing now, and hopefully Your Excellency, our ambassador, will have a second leg in Ireland. And not receiving a favor, but linking it with Trinity College, but also having our honorable leader, former president, also hosting us on the side in Ireland. So thank you so much, UWC. Thank you so much to Her Excellency Dr. Maropene for being part of this important event, and also her team, also for allowing you to spend the whole day with us at your age. But what we have seen is that your voice still commands, you're still that voice that we knew long time ago. So we appreciate that you have spent some time with us this afternoon, and we look forward to many this kind of program with you and your team. All the speakers from the morning session to now, we had ministers that we were with earlier on. Because of government program, they are not part of this closing session, but we still have an honorable minister here in the province. We really appreciate your time, spending the afternoon with us. We hope that we'll have more engagement and more programs with your province. As I've mentioned earlier, that this is our second home now. Dora Judith Lamini accepted to be the ambassador of the 125th anniversary when we started this journey. She's been with us. We highly appreciate that even today she's with us having this program. Tomorrow she'll be with us also, but what we have done as an institute, tomorrow's program cannot be a program of the family and the institute. We've identified 4, 5 women to be part of the ceremony tomorrow, who will accompany my aunt. Can you please come this side? Both of us who are descendants of Maxeke. She is the Manya, all the way from Limpopo, but based in Gauteng now. I'm also part of the families through the sister Kate. Kate got married to the Makanyas in KZN. So how the most of the source of history of Maxeke was through her biography, Calling of Kate Makanya. she wrote more about her sister than herself. That's how she loved and she honored her sister. So everyone must get a book, The Calling of Kate Makanya, to learn more about Kate, but also learn more about Charlotte Maxeke. So we don't have much of a time. There is an exhibition after this, but it is important to also acknowledge Dr. Tozama April, who after the biography of Kate Makanya, the first person to elevate the story of Maxeke through thesis was Dr. Tozama April. As we're celebrating 10 years this year in November, she's been with us for 10 years. Also, the voice of Maxeke today was Menolita Fagute. Thank you so much for accepting your role. And I will think that you represented her very well. The questions were relevant, the engagement, was inspiring, and I will think that when we start to also think about the second phase of this, you should play a central role. Thank you so much. Last but not least, I just want to thank the team from the CMMI. If they can just, where they are, they can stand up, or they can come to the stage quickly. 1 minute, 1 minute, 1 minute. And please come this side, good people. Can you come this side? This is the team that has made sure that we have a successful program today. So one more time, can you please give them a round of applause? As an extension of the program, the next program, we have created these portraits. On the 4th of August, we had what we call Portraits of Power. 15 countries nominated women that they thought played a meaningful role in their countries in terms of struggle, politics, education, and other spheres. So we have Dr. Mary Robinson, nominated by Ireland. We have also the 4 women that led the march on the other side. The march, the 70th anniversary, which we celebrate 70th this year. So then also the last one is Charlotte Maxeke. And it was created by students from different parts of this country. We'll continue the exhibition. There are 15 in all, but just brought these 3 for now. Thank you so much, good people. Safe travels, but we have a program after this. We're all going to be part of it. Just handing over to my colleague here.
Just to let you know that the exhibition opening, it will be opened by Mrs. Robinson. That starts at 6 p.m. So there is an hour for you to kind of gather yourselves. So yeah, just to announce, so it's called Rhythmic Solidarity, and it's on the Irish anti-apartheid movement. The photographs of Derek Spears, and also